This is our third vodcast, and in this one we're going to look at more examples of how cognition affects learning and how some of the cognitive theorists challenged Pavlov and Skinner and the assumptions they made about associative learning. All right, so in terms of cognitive learning theories, some of the researchers you'll need to know are listed here, and I want to focus on Bandura and observational learning. So this is from Module 30. So basically what Bandura was interested in was the social factors that involve learning. And he's going to combine cognitive factors with social factors for learning. So that's why this is important. These were again kind of blind spots in the periphery of Skinner and Pavlov's thinking. They didn't really take into consideration the social environment in an indirect way, the way Bandura does, where we can observe. It's not just direct experience, but we're observing others. And the idea that we do gain information and knowledge about the world by observing the behavior of other people. So let's go into more detail about how this may work. All right. So here's a definition of observational learning and a description. Observational learning is one of those terms you might see on a free response question, and you really don't want to just say it's observing by learning others. You have to include modeling, because modeling is the form of observational learning that Bandura is interested in and that we're interested in as well. So it has to do with watching others, that's the observation, right? And then you actually have to retain the information, and then you have to imitate or replicate. So there's observation and imitation. That's the modeling process. So modeling is a type of observational learning. It really comprises observational learning, and that has to be incorporated into your definition. Myers separates them out, right? But try to incorporate them. And you can emphasize this with classical and operant conditioning that really focused on the organism's direct experience of reinforcement and punishment leading to learning. And observational learning through modeling is really this indirect way of learning, but we know that this often happens in the real world. And Bandura was really taking advantage of this common sense approach to the world to figure out that, wait a minute, these guys are missing out on certain ideas. So he wasn't rejecting Pavlovian and Skinnerian principles. He was just adding to the body of knowledge that they somehow missed. All right, the other important thing is this, again, is an indirect process, right? Because we're not directly being reinforced or punished, right? Someone else is doing the behavior, right? The idea of modeling, watching, and then imitating others. Well, in order to do this, there are 4 factors that Bandura talked about. They're not in your book, so they're mentioned indirectly. So the one, obviously, is we have to pay attention, right? We have to focus our attention that's connected to the observation. The other thing is, in order to add this behavior to our repertoire, memory is involved. Remember, cognition. So we have to remember the activity about what we watched. And then we also ourselves have to imitate the behavior, right? So we have the watching and the imitating. That's the process of modeling. And the other factor, so again, Skinner would not have wanted to talk about motivation, because how can you measure and see motivation? But Bandura said, you got to be motivated to want to do the behavior. So in the Bobo doll experiment, it was about aggression, right? About how we model aggression for children. The children had to have some motivation for engaging in that behavior. And part of that is children are motivated to observe and follow the lead of adults. Now, adults also use observational learning, but children are definitely motivated to authority figures to imitate their authority figures. The other cool part is how this is mentioned somewhat in Myers, is this idea of vicarious reinforcement and punishment. So vicarious is indirect. If I live vicariously through someone else, their experiences, I try to relate to their experiences, but that other person is having the direct experience. My experience is vicarious. It's of a second nature. I'm not directly experiencing it, but I can see that other people may be doing an activity that seems rewarding to them, or perhaps they're doing an activity in which, I don't want to do that because I can see the negative effects the adverse effects it's having on them. So motivation is definitely connected to vicarious reinforcement and punishment, so not direct. And again, you can see how Bandura is incorporating the concepts from Skinner into his approach. So he's not completely rejecting Skinner. He's simply trying to show how Skinner's ideas can be expanded out into domains that Skinner refused to take them. So this is your first primer on observational learning. We'll do another vodcast as well.